Hi guys. So today's video is going to be some single point of view science fiction and fantasy books. A little bit ago somebody asked me if I could do this video, and at first it was a little tricky to find science fiction and fantasy books that were single point of view, because for those of you that read the genre, you know often they're multiple point of view. But once I sat down, I looked at my bookshelf, or I looked through books that I've read before, I realized that I had enough where I could break it into some young adult single point of view books and then some adult single point of view books. I'm going to start today with the young adult books, and just as a heads up, a couple of these I no longer own, but I have read, so I've read all of these books that I'm mentioning. I'm going to start off with a series that's actually a trilogy written by Leigh Bardugo, and that would be the Grisha series. The world geographically in the story is divided by something called the Shadowfold, which is overrun with these monsters, and the only way that they can be defeated is if this person who has this magical ability to use light can come in and destroy them. Our main character, Alina, is an orphan, and she's joined the military in their kingdom as a cartographer, so she doesn't really think much is gonna be happening for her. She doesn't really think she's very exceptional, and then she finds out she may be that person of the prophecies that can use light to defeat these creatures. I personally found the writing style of this series to be very straightforward, so it's not overly poetic or flowery, which is nice because there is magic in the world beyond just the possible light person, and because it's a different world than ours, anytime there's a direct writing style, it just makes it easier and more accessible. So if you're looking for not only a single point of view fantasy, but one that is easy to get into, Grisha Trilogy is a good one. Next up is a book that I've mentioned a decent amount of times on my channel. I don't see it talked about a ton, but I really enjoyed it. It is not only single point of view, but as of right now, it's a standalone, and I just thought it was really fun, and that would be Long May She Reign by Rhiannon Thomas. If you like murder mysteries, you're probably gonna like this book, or any kind of mystery, because there's a lot of intrigue. That's basically what the whole book is political intrigue. When it first starts off, our main character, who is 23rd in line for the throne, by no means thinks that she has any chance of ever having to deal with anything political because she's so far from being the ruler, but something happens at the beginning of the book and suddenly she's the queen. Not only is she very unprepared to be the ruler, but she's definitely at risk of being killed because stuff happened to everybody else in line for the throne before her. So now not only is she having to navigate being the queen, but she's also trying to figure out what were the threats, who did this, who committed this terrible act. It's essentially a whodunit story set in a fantastical world. Something I really loved about the story is the main character, Freya. She always stays true to who she is, and she uses who she is to help her politically. So she doesn't try to change necessarily, she does try to fit into her new role, but she uses the things that are already natural to her to try and figure out problems and have solutions. I really appreciated this about the story because I personally, a huge pet peeve of mine, is when characters just fit whatever problem comes up, suddenly their personalities change or their prior weaknesses suddenly aren't really there, and I appreciated that this character stayed true to their personality type because it made it feel like a real person. Next up is a book that is definitely not for everybody because there is a strong, whimsical writing style, and the main character is somewhat passive, which can be a little bit frustrating, but I personally loved this book, and that would be Heartless by Marissa Meyer. This book is a villain origin story. It's about the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland before she became the Queen of Hearts and how she became the Queen of Hearts. And I personally am not an Alice in Wonderland person, so when I picked this up, I didn't have extremely high expectations, but I was really surprised at how much I really loved it. Because it's a villain origin story, the whole time you're knowing things are gonna go terribly wrong, and so you're sitting there and you're like, wait, how is this gonna go so poorly? Like, is she gonna pull one on us? Turns out it's not really a villain origin story and it turns out happy, or is it actually gonna like go terribly wrong and break my heart in the end? And I'm not gonna tell you, I loved it. I'm surprised at how much I loved it, but it is one of my favorite books, and it's a standalone too, like Long May She Reign, so it's not only single point of view, but one and done. The next book I'm going to mention is one that I no longer have, but it is a science fiction book that's single point of view, and that would be The Diabolic by S.J. Kincaid. I actually think this is a really well written book. I think the premise is really great. For me personally, I didn't like the direction it ended up going, but it's still a really good book and a lot of people love it. The premise for the book is that it is very futuristic, and there are people who are almost bred to be really strong and have this bond to another human being so that they can guard them, and they're known as diabolics. Our main character is one of these people. She's a diabolic, and she has this extreme bond to the person she's supposed to be protecting, and something happens where the person she's supposed to be protecting, her parents do not want her to go into this political situation, and so the diabolic ends up going in her place. She is going not only in her place but disguised as her, so she's supposed to be pretending to be that person, which is very outside of her nature. She was not raised to be the kind of person that would fit into almost like a noble society. And because the diabolic is trying to navigate all these political situations, she is single point of view, so you have no idea what is going on outside of what your main character knows. And not only is it single point of view, but it's first person, so you really don't know what's going on outside of her head. Going along with that, another single point of view and first person point of view story that a lot of people really love is the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. This book is technically new adult, not young adult, so there are more mature themes, and it's sold in the young adult section though, so I felt I could kind of group it with the other books that I've talked about. But this series, the very first one, is supposed to be a loose Beauty and the Beast retelling, and the main character is in this world where there's a divide between humans and the Fae, and on her side she happens to go hunting one day. She kills what she thought was a wolf, but it turned out it was a Fae, and now she has to come to the Fae land and be held essentially captive for the rest of her life. While it is a fantasy world and it's marketed as fantasy, it is very romance heavy. I would say it's more romance set in a fantasy world rather than fantasy with some elements of romance, but that, if you like romance, will be absolutely perfect for you. The writing style, I think, is reflective of that. It definitely has very flowery dialogue, and kind of to the point where I think about how when my husband and I talk to each other, it's like we don't talk to each other like that at all, but they are almost like swoon-worthy type quotes and stuff. It's a very quotable book. But anyway, that's it for the 5 young adult single point of view books. For any of you that know of other young adult single point of view fantasy and science fiction books that you want to recommend, feel free to do that in the comment section down below, so that way anybody who's looking for more than just the books I mentioned can check out your comments and maybe get ideas from you. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Click the little bell icon so you get notified when I post new videos, and check out some more of my videos right over here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.